Good morning. Man, you all look so good in the red. You would look even better in blue.
Amen, brother.
But for people wearing red, you look really good. So stay around with us afterwards. We want a really good group picture. It'll be in the paper, and I want everybody to be in it, whether you're wearing red or not, because I want this group to be bigger than last year's group, okay? So, and which we are. So we're glad to see you this morning. Let's all stand for the reading of God's Word. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 12. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 12. I am reading from a teacher from the Holman Standard. So if you have the King James or a different translation, the word will be just a little bit different, but the Holman is on the screen. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. Now finally, all of you should be like-minded and sympathetic, should love believers and be compassionate and humble, not paying back evil for evil or insult for insult, but on the contrary, giving a blessing, since you were called for this, so that you can inherit a blessing. For the one who wants to love life and to see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. And he must turn away from evil and do good. He must seek peace and pursue it, because the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. Let's pray together. Father, speak to our hearts in this room this morning. Let us hear your voice and yours alone, and we'll ask it in Jesus' name. And everybody said, praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
You may be seated. How many in this room today are married? How many in this room today are glad that you're married? I would ask how many of you are sorry that you're married, but I don't want to see any hands raised on that one. They say that marriage is made in heaven, but so is thunder and lightning. They say love is a dream, and marriage is the alarm clock. What do we do in relationships in general? We talk about Valentines Day, but what do we do in relationships in general? Because in relationships in general, we have conflict. We're all going to have conflict at some point. Boyfriend, girlfriend has conflict, and they have to decide whether or not they want to stay together. And engagements have conflicts, and they have to decide, do we really want to get married? Marriages have conflicts, and they have to decide, do we want to stay married? Relationships, friendships have conflict, and we have to decide, is the conflict greater than our friendship? So everybody has conflict in our lives. We have conflict at work. We have conflict at home. We have conflict in the church. It's not that we're not ever going to have conflict. It's a matter of how we handle conflict. And so if we think about Thanksgiving. We think about Valentine's Day. It's the day where we spend a lot of money. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. How many of you are married to a romantic man? Let me see your hands. Just like 2 or 3 of y'all. How many wish your man was a little bit more romantic than he is? Let me see your hands. Most of us guys are not romantic. Now, let me just tell you what my personal opinion. Cards are a waste of money. You read them, you throw them away. Flowers are a waste of money. They die after a few days. Chocolate, however, is really not good because it goes to your hips. So we spend a lot of money trying to prove to somebody that, hey, we love them, but shouldn't that be the idea that we should be doing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Exactly. We shouldn't be waiting until Valentine's Day to tell somebody we love them. In the Peanuts cartoon, everybody know who I'm talking about, Snoopy? Lucy says to Snoopy, there are times you really bug me. But I also must admit there's times I'd like to give you a really big hug. Snoopy replies, that's the way I am, huggable and buggable. And so it is with our relationships. We need each other, but we also annoy each other. It's the old saying that before you got married, opposites attract. After you get married, opposites irritate. Do you know what I'm talking about? We're like two porcupines that are huddled close together to stay warm on a cold winter's night. The closer they come in contact together with each other in order to stay warm, the more their quills prick each other and they can't stay together. And so they separate only to find that when they're off by themselves, they get cold again. And so it is with our relationships. We need each other, but at times we also needle each other. We often play this disruptive dance of disharmony. The people that are closest to us are generally the people that we're in conflict with the most. And isn't that the truth? Now think about it for just a minute. Somebody aggravates you on the job and you go home, you keep quiet, you don't say anything, but you go home, and as soon as something's not exactly right at home, you blow up at the house. We always tend to blow up on the person that means the most to us, that we know that will forgive us. And so a lot of times in relationships, especially if you're married, the aggravation, the explosion happens at the house on the one that you need the most, but on the one that you also are pretty confident that will forgive you the most. And so we need each other, but we also needle each other. In church, as the old saying goes, we long to live together in heaven, but that's the old story. But to live down here together in harmony, well, that's a different story. It's hard to get along in life. Peter instructed all of us that we should be, if you go back here and look at verse 8, look at what Peter's instructions are for all of us. You got that for me, verse 8? Look at what he says. Now finally, all of you should be what? Like-minded and what? Sympathetic. Two things he tells us. We should be like-minded and sympathetic. All right? That doesn't mean that we're always going to agree on everything. But we should strive to be like-minded. I want to give you some things this morning to help you dealing with conflict. And whether it's on your job, whether it's in your home, whether it's in your relationship, I want to give you 3 or 4 things this morning that will help you in dealing with conflict. First of all, when you deal with conflict, number 1, try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And you already know that. I'm not giving you anything that's life-changing that you do. Wow, man, that guy's just intelligent. He knows a lot of stuff. I'm giving you something simple, but sometimes we forget that. Try to walk in another person's shoes. That's what he says. Try to be like-minded. Try to figure out what it would be like if you were in that person's shoes. I've had people come to me over the years and say, "Preacher, I can't believe so-and-so's doing such and such." And my thought to them, and my reply to them has been, if you had experienced what they experienced and lived in the situation in which they lived, you might do what they have done. See, it's easy to sit back from afar and judge somebody based on what they're doing or what they're not doing without ever walking a mile in their shoes. Because all of us in this room are made up of experiences, and we're made up of things that have happened to us that turn us out into who we are today. You just didn't wake up here one day and just say, "Shazam, here I am." You're a sum total of all the things that have happened to you in your life. You're a sum total of the things the way you've been raised, the things that have happened to you, the things that have been said to you, the ways that you've been treated, the attitudes and the way that you conduct yourself today is got to do with a lot of that. So when we look at other people's life who irritate us, sometimes put yourselves in their shoes. To be sympathetic is what he says here. Like-minded and sympathetic means to understand or to validate someone's feelings. It does not mean we validate their ideas, but we can validate their feelings. Being sympathetic basically meets 2 needs in the human psyche. The need to be understood and the need to feel like our feelings matter. Hey, let me ask you something. Have you ever, in relationship, have you ever said this? Men, has your wife ever said to you, "Well, you just don't care how I feel"? One fella raised his hand and the rest of you cowards just sit over here like this. Come on, guys. All right. Huh? How many of you guys, by a show of hands, have ever had your woman look at you and say, "Well, you just don't understand how I feel"? And may the rest of you cowards get a cab home this afternoon. mean, it's inevitable that at times, you don't understand how I feel. And ladies, sometimes your men have said that to you. You don't understand how I feel. The reality is that we don't. We come from two different ends of the spectrum. God made the man and He made a woman. And He made them different. Not just sexually different, but different and all the way around on purpose. Now, guy, whether you want to believe the Scripture or not, the Scripture makes the statement in Genesis, God said that it was not good for man to be alone. And all these years later, man has been asking God, what were you thinking? It's not good for man to be alone. So He gave man a what? A helper. And He made her different than him. See, listen, what we try to do in life is we try to huddle ourselves around people who think like we do, who have the political views that we do, who have the religious views that we do, who have the same sort of ideas that we do, without ever trying to get somebody in our lives to counterbalance us. That's what relationships are supposed to be like, especially husband and wife. We're sort of supposed to counterbalance each other, complement each other. What I'm lacking in, she's supposed to have that. What she's lacking in, I'm supposed to be a little bit better in. In our situation, I'm really good in public. She doesn't like to be in public. She doesn't like to talk in public. She doesn't like to be known in public. She just wants to be over in the corner and be quiet. While I'm really good at this side of it, there's things that she's better at home than I am. And so we're to be sympathetic. We're to understand the other person. And so I would say to you today, if you're in a situation where you're struggling in your relationship at home, you're struggling at work, somebody's getting on your nerves, try to put yourself in their shoes. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have to agree with them, but at least try to understand. We had a situation arise where and I won't tell you exactly all the details about it because this is going to be put on the internet, but I will tell you that something was said to me about another person. A little boy liked a little girl, but he found out that she didn't live on the right side of town. And the thing was, I don't know if I can hang out with her because of where she come from. What do you think about that? And I said, well, listen, young people, you need to understand something. All y'all young people that go to school, your friends can't help where they live at. Some people are born into families that don't have a whole lot. Some people are born into families where their mom and dad don't try. Some people are born into families where their mom and dad put other habits ahead of the kids. And so here's what I'd say to all of us. If you got a good family, you got a good mom and dad, you need to hug their necks and tell them that you love them and you thank them. Because the old saying, except by the grace of God, there go I. We all could have been in a situation where we've been on the wrong side of the tracks. And so we have to understand that people understand other people's feelings, their thoughts, what they're thinking about. Hey, you're just one mistake away from needing somebody to be sympathetic to you. You're just one job loss away from living in the conditions that other people live in. Now, some people do stuff to themselves that are stupid. Can we all agree to that?
Yeah.
Some people do stuff to themselves that's stupid. Families and especially men that put other things ahead of their families are not men at all. Just not. If you can't feed your family, you don't take care of your family, you putting drugs and alcohol ahead of your family, you hanging out with your buddies more than you're taking care of your wife, that's on you, man. God didn't do that, and she deserves better than that. We need to step up and be men. But also there's people in the world that has stuff happen to them in life that has damaged them. I got a phone call. I don't know, it was early one morning, about 9 o'clock in the morning. It said, "Preacher, did you see the news? And I said, no, I haven't had the TV on this morning. They said, well, you need to go to your computer and punch up the local television channel on the computer and look at this particular article. And so I went to the computer, looked it up. And I said, well, what am I looking at? And they said, well, look at the house in the background. This looks like a house where somebody that went to church with us at the time lived at. Well, I got to looking at it, and sure enough, it was. So we believe that the woman that's talked about in this article is the woman that lives in this house. And what ended up happening was this woman was in a relationship with a man. She got saved in our church. She got her life turned around and born again. And she understood that for her, living with this guy wasn't the option anymore. She's a Christian. She's going to try to do this thing different. And so she went to the guy, told him that, hey, I'm a Christian now. We can't do this. We can still date and all that, but you're going to have to find another place to live. He flipped his wig, put a gun to her head, and pulled the trigger. And so I don't have any other detail but to call around Lexington and find out where she's at. Found out she's in what hospital she's at. She went in there to see her. I expected it to be the worst, but what ended up happening, either he was a really bad aim or God just got down in there and shielded it real good, because he shot her and it grazed the top of her head and went like that, and she was sitting up in the hospital bed. And I thought, okay, let me put myself in her position for just a minute. Maybe I could understand why she was doing what she was doing. And so maybe sometimes in your relationships you do put yourself in your wife's spot. We come home from work, we're tired, we sit down on the couch or sit there. I have a recliner. I'm going to tell a little secret. I have a recliner, and I gave my recliner a name. I call it the Word. So if anybody calls me and asks me what I'm doing, you know what I tell them? I'm in the Word. Because I'm a preacher, ain't I supposed to be in the Bible is the Word? I'm in the Word, so I tell them, what are you doing? I'm in the Word. And they'll think, God, that guy is so spiritual. He's, you ever call me? He's in the Word. All the time we call him, he's in the Word. So I call my recliner the Word. Long after I've gone to bed, even though she works as many hours as I work, long after I've gone to bed, she's still up doing. And some of you ladies know exactly what I'm talking about because you do the same thing. We got to be more sympathetic in our relationships. How can I help you? How can I bless you? Look what he says. Now finally, all of you should be like-minded and sympathetic, should love believers, and be compassionate and humble, not paying back evil for evil or insult for insult. But on the contrary, giving what? A blessing. Feller, listen, a blessing could be loading the dishwasher for her after lunch today. A blessing could be taking a load of laundry downstairs or bringing up a load of towels out of the dryer. A blessing to her could be just the way you hang a roll of toilet paper. I didn't realize this was an issue, but hanging a roll of toilet paper is an issue in a lot of places because there's one or two ways, over or under. Now let me just ask, because I've asked this before, I've never asked you all, which way is correct? How many people do I have in this room that says over is the way toilet paper is supposed to be? Wow. How many says under? Several. How many of y'all really don't care at all?
The picture of the original patent shows it over.
Picture of the original patent shows it over.
Depends on how long your arm is.
But depends on how long your arm is. But when you're first married, a lot of that matters. You didn't realize that you were dating this guy and he was all Casanova, and you didn't find out that he had a 500-pound gorilla tied up at home waiting. That's who he really was. You didn't realize that when you married this dude that he just threw his underwear on the floor and you'd have to come behind him and pick him up. Things in relationships create conflict, but we're to be a blessing. Guy, pick up your dirty underwear and put them in the basket. Ain't this, I'm guilty of this, okay? That basket can be 3 feet from where I'm at. Instead of going to 3 feet and put them in there, I'll just lay them on the floor wherever I'm at. How many right there, how many like it with anybody besides me? Be a blessing. Pick up that stuff and put them in there. All right. Secondly, the second thing I want to say to you, remember you're on the same team. remember you're on the same team. Peter says that we're on the same team. We're in the same marriage. We're in the same family. We are in mutual relationships. We are in this thing together. We are brothers and sisters. We don't compete with each other. We complement each other. You're supposed to make me better. I'm supposed to make you better. We minimize conflict with each other by maximizing cooperation together. You watch any kind of sport, you realize this. Teammates display three important actions that diffuse conflict: love, compassion, and humbleness. Love says, I'll look out for the other's best interest. It says, let's stop attacking each other and find a common solution. Compassion says, let's just not talk about loving each other, but let's actually do it. And humility says, love's not proud. It admits that we've made a mistake. It's being honest with our weaknesses, our needs, and our failures. It's often used in these type of phrases: I need your help. I was wrong. Would you forgive me? Henry Emerson Fosdick, speaking of a major conflict he experienced in his ministry, said this: there are many opinions, and I'm not always sure whether they are right or wrong, but one thing I am sure of: courtesy and kindness and tolerance and humility and fairness are right. Opinions may be mistaken, but love never is. Oh, we could fix a whole lot of stuff if we realize we're all on the same team. You know what the number one cause of divorce in marriages is? Money. 50% of all marriages end in divorce. The number one cause of divorce is money problems. We get into debt, we get stressed, we get overwhelmed, we don't know what we're going to do. But ladies and gentlemen, realize we got to work through this thing together. You may be here today and you may be exactly one of those. You're stressed out to your eyeballs because of your financial situation. But I want to tell you something. We made this decision. We've been married 21 years, been together 26. We made this decision a long time ago. Not one time would we ever fight over money situations. Money's not worth losing our marriage over. They can come and take everything that I've got. They can have everything that I own. But I'm not going to lose my marriage over money. Because the old saying that I raised up under saying, you can't get blood out of a... And I'm not going to stress over money situations. I want to say the third thing, how you can love in relationships, is be a blessing. Be a blessing. Be a blessing. Here's an easy way to think about it. When you got a fire, get you a bucket of water and throw it out. Most of the time when we have fires in our families, in our relationships, in our conflict, we add gasoline. Loose lips sink ships. But a quiet demeanor can end conflict. Not everything needs a response. Now, most of the time in relationships, somebody's got to have the last word. Now, which one of y'all in this room, in your relationship, has to have the last... If you're the person that has to have the last word, let me see your hand. Hey, I understand. Because in arguments, you want to justify your position. You want somebody to understand where you're coming from. But maybe the last word ought to be no word. Here was the old saying that we all grew up learning: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never. That's a lie. That's a lie. Sticks and stones will break your bones and your bones will eventually heal, but words that are spoken in anger will never be forgotten. How many, don't raise your hand, but think about this for just a minute. Maybe early on in your marriage, you said something or you did something, you said something hateful and mean, and all these years later, she's never forgot it. It's just the way it is. It hurts. Words hurt. And so what we can learn to do is instead of having to have the last word instead of creating that conflict or keeping it going, maybe the last word is no word at all. One of the old preachers that I know, Cova Duval, loved Brother Duval. Wish I had what Brother Duval had. Brother Duval had I don't know, wish I had a missing finger, but Brother Duval had a missing finger, and he would crook it like that. And I don't have what Brother Duval had. I don't have that boldness just to tell you what I think. I just don't have that in me. I wish I did. Wish I could just be able to say, hey, this is the way it is. But that's not who I am. But he had the ability. He'd take that little crooked finger and he'd look at people. And if they didn't agree with him, he'd say, you go home, pray about it. And when you get to heaven, you'll find out I was right. Well, there's some lessons into that in our times of conflict in relationships. Maybe instead of arguing, we go pray about it. If you're in this room this morning and you want a better marriage, you want a better spouse, don't go look on your job to find the woman who will pay you attention, who looks like she's got it all together, who pays you a little bit more of attention. Don't do that, because it's a trap. Here's how you get a better relationship. Go in the other room, pray for your spouse. Better yet, go in the other room and pray for you. Lord, help me to be the partner they need. I learned this lesson a long time ago. When we first got married, we loved each other, but when we were dating, wanted to get married, couldn't wait to get married, got married, hated each other. What in the world was I thinking? And so we fought all the time. I have ruined more shirts like this. Thought it was Hulk Hogan. I'd grab these. She'd make me mad. I'd grab my shirt and stretch it like that. Buttons, poop, poop, poop everywhere. Broke more remote controls. Radio Shack on Todd's Road there in Todd Center. I bought more remote controls from Radio Shack when I was in my early 20s. I kept that place in business because I'd get mad and just throw the remote control into the wall, bust it in 1,000 pieces. And I thought, boy, if I was praying, God, you need to change her because I can't stand her and this ain't what I signed up for and I deserve a better wife. You need to change her. And God looked at me and said, boy, you need to change you. And it changed my life because I quit praying, Lord, change her, and started praying, Lord, change me. It changed our relationship. It changed our outlook. And now all these years later, we're still together. We're still doing what we're doing when it looked like we wasn't going to make it. But I said, Lord, change me. Help me be the man I'm supposed to be. Help me be the husband I'm supposed to be. Help me to control my tongue. Help me to control my attitude. Help me to control my thought. I thought, hey man, she ain't treat me right. There's all kinds of women that are in love with me. I got old now and realized wasn't nobody paying me no attention. I was 140 pounds, a little skinny old thing. They looked at me like I was a little Ethiopian from overseas somewhere. They weren't paying no attention to me. But I just thought every girl come along, boy, she wants me. Yeah, buddy. You ought to be glad. I had this attitude. You ought to be glad you got me because there's women lining up wanting a chance to date me. She left me. I'd have been so alone it would have been pitiful. I was so full of myself, man. Now, I still got it a little. Just a little. But I began to learn I got to change me. How many times when we get into conflict we say, well, they're wrong. And we don't look and say, well, okay, hold it. Let me think about this over again. Because what happens, we get emotion tied up in it. We get angry. The last thing is this. Learn to control your tongue. Learn to control your tongue. Not everything's beneficial to say. Having the last word's not necessary. And I would say to you, before you say something that you can't take back, don't say anything at all. Learn that, and that's a huge thing. Look what it says. Verse 10. For the one who wants to love life and see good days. How many want to see good days? Whoever wants to love life and see good days must keep his what? Tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. And he must turn away from evil and do good. See, notice what he says here. You've got to guard this thing right here. Here's what it looks like. You're aggravated with your husband, and you go to work, and you start just talking about him like, knucklehead. I tell you what, let me tell you how he acts. He didn't get me no Valentines gift. He didn't get me no chocolates. He didn't take me out to eat. That knucklehead, he won't do nothing. He's terrible. And then my wife works in an office full of women, and they, and she tells me the stories about that, how they all chime in on how terrible their husbands are. I said, please, God, tell me you don't do that with me. If you're going to do anything, tell them I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread or something. And guys go to work and they use this terminology, the old lady. Well, the old lady, she got on my nerves last night. You know what that does? That sets up a breeding ground for another man or another woman to work their way in and get a crack in. And the next thing you know, you messed up and you're doing something that you shouldn't do. I have a preacher friend right now that's going through marital difficulties because he had an affair on his wife. And it started in the area of this. Exactly what I'm talking about. And listen, if it can happen to a preacher, happen to anybody. Happen to any of us. So guard what you say. You go to work and all the women are talking about their husbands, don't chime in with that. Say, bless your husband. I got the best man in the country, whether you believe it or not. Well, let me tell you about my husband. He's so good and kind and polite. Guy, you go to work and some woman wanting to act all cute with you and stuff, and you know what I'm talking about. You go, look here, get behind me, Satan. I got a good woman at home. Because the grass ain't always greener over on the other side. Interesting thing about this. You see all these attractive supermodels and actresses and all that stuff, what Hollywood calls America's beautiful people. And you notice one thing about most of them, they all have relationship problems. And a lot of guys look at some of these girls, on, the TV girls, and say, man, why, I wish I had a woman that looked like that. But think about it for just a minute. There's a guy that's just left her because he's tired of dealing with her. Control what you say. Bless your spouse. Bless your church. When I was in Mount Sterling, I'll close with this. One of the things I enjoyed doing more than anything, but we had to eat out every Sunday because we lived 50 miles away from the house. So, I didn't want to pack bologna sandwiches every Sunday, so we just ate out. And I would sit and listen to conversations around the tables around me. And man, let me tell you something. On Sunday afternoon, boy, they'd be roasting the preacher while they was waiting on the chicken dinner. Man, boy, he preached awful. He preached too long. He didn't make no sense, The thing I always thought about that is, what about the little girl or little guy who's waiting on the table and hears all that don't go to church because he's got to work? Why would he want to go to church if he didn't have to work, if he heard how bad that your church you go to is? You ever think about that? Well, I don't want to go. Why do I want to go to their church? Look how they come in here every Sunday, talk about how the preacher too fat, he too loud, he spits on people when he speaks. It's just terrible. I want you to walk out here today and bless. Man, let me tell you something. Go to the restaurant today, and when the little waitress comes to you and says, "Where you been?" "I've been to the best church in the county."
Hallelujah.
Got the best looking preacher in all of Harrison County. Woo! Lord have mercy. Bless. Look at your spouse today and say, hey, listen here. Look at your spouse today and say, thank you. Guy, listen to me. Look at your wife. If your wife is with you right now, look at her and say, just look at her. Look at her eyes right now and say, thank you. Say thank you. Now, you know why I say to say thank you? Because she's putting up with your knucklehead. Lady, look at your husband and say thank you. Because he's putting up with your knucklehead. We're all knuckleheads. But bless. Speak good. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Love beyond limits. Don't take yourself so serious. You only get one shot at this old thing here called life. Make the most of it. Pray for each other. Love each other. You're here today. We're going to have a word of invitation. You want to give your spouse, you want to give your little sweetie the best Valentine's Day ever? Here's the best Valentine's Day present you'll ever give your little sweetie. Two things. First of all, if you're not